Hey everybody, how you doing? I am here today with Mr. David Gamage, who's going to tell us all about this awesome monster of a book here, 700 pages, The Fire Still Burns, which is in essence, and correct me if I'm getting this right here, it's an oral history of modern post-punk bands. Do I have that
Yeah,
right, Dave?
pretty much, Travis. It's a bunch of bands that I know. We're just shooting the breeze, just kicking stories around, and we figured we should write some of that down, because people like to hear that kind of thing. And it's like a massive conversation down the pub, but it's all rock bands telling their stories, and yeah, that made it real easy to write. It took a while because there's a lot of it, but I had to stop at that point because I was running out of pages.
No, it's huge. 700. I mean, when the thing came, I ordered it and I could not believe, again, people, look at the size of this thing. 700 pages. I couldn't believe how much it weighed. I thought there were two books in the
I I
package.
figured I figured if anyone didn't like it, they could always kill a burglar or something like that, or block a
Right.
door open or something. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into it. But the way that one's written, there's about 80 different rock bands, post punk bands in that, and I took stories from each one, so you can kind of dip in and out. You don't have to read the whole thing in a flow. You can just dip in and out a bit. So yeah,
Well,
easy reading.
that's what I've actually really enjoyed about it so far is, well, let me give props to Terry, Mike Terry from the Jukebox Romantics. He's
Yeah,
in here. He
brilliant
told
band.
me, he said, Travis, you're going to love this book. Pick it up. And sure enough, I did. And when I first got it, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to read this? But then I realized what it was, and you can read it a band at a time.
Yeah,
There's no narrative that pulls it through. So, you can hop all over the place and it's really great. I think it's a terrific little, well, it's almost like it's a nice slice of history in the punk rock
yeah.
world.
Exactly. It's kind of a, you could call it like a social history, if you like, for post punkers or rockers. But it is important. I think it is important to kind of look at alternative lifestyles and what people get up to. There's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of jokey anecdotes about gigs and tours,
Sure.
but there's also a lot of stuff in there about people's inspirations, people influences and inspirations, and why they do what they do. Um, because it's not always easy in a kind of a rough and ready scene to turn up and play night after night.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Special guest today, David Gamage, author of a post-punk oral history called The Fire Still Burns. It's a great read, although 700 pages. 700 pages. We're going to hear all about it now. Hey everybody, how you doing? I am here today with Mr. David Gamage, who's going to tell us all about this awesome monster of a book here, 700 pages, The Fire Still Burns, which is in essence, and correct me if I'm getting this right here, it's an oral history of modern post-punk bands. Do I have that
Yeah,
right, Dave?
pretty much, Travis. It's a bunch of bands that I know. We're just shooting the breeze, just kicking stories around, and we figured we should write some of that down, because people like to hear that kind of thing. And it's like a massive conversation down the pub, but it's all rock bands telling their stories, and yeah, that made it real easy to write. It took a while because there's a lot of it, but I had to stop at that point because I was running out of pages.
No, it's huge. 700. I mean, when the thing came, I ordered it and I could not believe, again, people, look at the size of this thing. 700 pages. I couldn't believe how much it weighed. I thought there were two books in the
I
package.
I figured I figured if anyone didn't like it, they could always kill a burglar or something like that, or block a
Right.
door open or something. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into it. But the way that one's written, there's about 80 different rock bands, post punk bands in that, and I took stories from each one, so you can kind of dip in and out. You don't have to read the whole thing in a flow. You can just dip in and out a bit. So yeah,
Well,
easy reading.
that's what I've actually really enjoyed about it so far is, well, let me give props to Terry, Mike Terry from the Jukebox Romantics. He's
Yeah,
in here. He
brilliant
told me,
band.
he said, Travis, you're gonna love this book. Pick it up. And sure enough, I did. And when I first got it, I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna read this? But then I realized what it was, and you can read it a band at a time.
Yeah,
There's no narrative that pulls it through. So, you can hop all over the place, and it's really great. I think it's a terrific little, well, it's almost like it's a nice slice of history in the punk rock
yeah,
world.
exactly. It's kind of a, you could call it like a social history, if you like, for post punkers or rockers. But it is important. I think it is important to kind of look at alternative lifestyles and what people get up to. There's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of jokey anecdotes about gigs and tours,
Sure.
but there's also a lot of stuff in there about people's inspirations, people influences and inspirations, and why they do what they do. Because it's not always easy in a kind of a rough and ready scene to turn up and play night after night. But it's cool, we try to take the positives from it and anything funny from it, and it's you you mentioned Jukebox Romantics, absolutely brilliant band, but there's actually quite a few New York area bands in there. There's Neck Scars as well. I think Tired Radio. There's a bunch of
Yes.
bands that you guys might know. But the good thing again about it is there's bands from all different areas of the scene, all different countries. UK, Europe, all around the states, and it's more about what pulls them all together. That makes them kind of similar, if you like. They're all different, but they've all got a kind of common thread. And I just find that sort of thing really interesting. It was, like I say, it was a pretty easy book to write.
Yes. Well, that's something that I found, that common thread that you mentioned, for those of us who were into the punk music or the punk scene and all the different variations of that. Some guys can sometimes be, well, I'm more punk than you nonsense, but for me, my tastes run the gamut.
Yeah,
Um, but it's the same, if you're a metalhead and you like that, well, that's really your world, and or country music, you name it. But for you, I think the beauty of what you've done here, and I can kind of relate it to, help me out, Please Kill Me. That was what Legs McNeil, and I have it written down here, Gillian McCain, when they put that out in 2005, 2006.
yeah,
It was a nice history for older guys like me, you
yeah.
know? And here, and again, you're certainly not ripping it off. There's nothing new about this sort of work,
It's
but
been done before.
you've chronicled so many of these kids, many who we know, many who we will never know, but they are now physically a piece of history. And I think that's a beautiful thing, man. I
Uh,
think you really did a good thing here.
Thank you. I mean, it's very good of you to say that, Travis. I appreciate it. I kind of it has been done before, and it's been done better, but it's been done in certain ways. The first book kind of like that I read was all ages, more about the straight edge scene and the New York hardcore scene. But
Yes.
there's been loads since that. There's been post, about the more sort of emo rock scene. There's been a whole bunch. Here in the UK, we have an author called Ian Glasper, who he's more of a punk, proper punk hardcore guy, but he's almost like the punk historian.
Yeah.
And he's on like his eighth or ninth book now, and he writes the history of punk almost like a decade at a time, but talking about all the bands, not just the big bands you've heard of, the Damned and the Pistols and the Clash, but he'll write about a bunch of stuff you maybe haven't heard of. So you kind of learn something and you get more of a nuance to it and a bit more interest. What he does for punk, in some small way, I kind of do that more for, melodic hardcore, if you like, post punk melodic hardcore. My tastes are slightly broader than just punk. I like
Yes.
all kinds of stuff, even mellower stuff as well as I'm getting older. So when I wrote my first couple of books, they were more on my own experiences. It's obviously easier to write about my own stuff, but when people saw them and read them, they started getting in touch with me more, and we were chatting about their stories. So the Fire Still Burns is really other people's stories. I just found it really easy and interesting to write. So
Yeah. No, I so far, again, at 700 pages, I'm barely a quarter of the way through it so far, and I have been bouncing around, but I have enjoyed these stories very much, and I really appreciate what you've done. Now, this is book number 3 for you. All right,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
all right, and the first one was Punk Faction. Do I have that right?
Punk Faction, which was so way back when I was putting on gigs and only just starting to play in bands and stuff, helping other people's labels, doing, like mixtapes for my friends and stuff, what you do when you're a teenager. I started a fanzine, and it was a lot of enthusiasm without a lot of kind of know-how, like most things. But it was cool. It had some nice articles and a few interviews and stuff like that. So my first book really was a collection of from the fanzines, interviews and articles and stuff from the fanzines. So that was just this little Punk Faction thing, and I got lucky there because having played in bands and run a label for so long, I know a lot of good guys, and I was chatting with Frank Turner about it, and he
I
remembered
am a
coming
fan.
to some of the shows. I mean, he's a great guy, proper hardcore punk guy. Plays kind of folky music, but it, proper punker, and he knows how important fanzines are and the kind of scene grapevine, if you like. He was at
Yes.
gigs, remembers picking up some, so he offered to write the foreword for it and help promote it and stuff. So that went pretty well. That got off to a pretty good start. But yeah, that's like I say, that's a regular size kind of book. Maybe 200, 300 pages, and that's
Yes.
like. I'm pleased with it and I'm proud of it, but it's nothing compared to the next two. The next two are like
Well, no, the other one, Hardcore Heart, all
yeah,
right? And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it landed perfectly at 666 pages.
yeah, yeah. The number of the beast.
Yes,
That
exactly.
obviously that was intentional, Travis. I think I'd got to like 660, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to make this
Yes.
666. I'm going to have to now, so I just bullshit a bit more. But I yeah, so Hardcore Heart is what I would say the first like proper book I've written. I kind of that happened in COVID,
Yes.
so I was busy playing with my band and running the label and stuff, and I was pretty busy all the time until COVID came along, and then obviously like everyone had a bunch of spare time on my hands. Um, I've got two boys, and I was chatting with them about a few stories from back in the day. Just playing with some hot water music on tour, Green Day on tour, No Effects, Sam I Am, all these great bands, and they're not all positive stories. There's ups and downs to life on the
Sure,
road and
sure.
stuff like that.
Well,
But they're like
sometimes the downs make for better stories.
exactly, and it can be bittersweet. But they were like, you should write some of that down, Dad. You should. And I'm like, well, when COVID came along, I had some time, so I dug out some old diaries and some gig posters and stuff, and I started writing it down. And I kind of, you don't intend to write, a doorstop of a book. You just start writing your notes, and I actually honed it down a few times, but over about a year, actually a little bit more than a year, um, it just ended up being, 666 pages. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop there. That covers through the 90s and the first year of the millennium, the first year of 2000. It's about 90 to about 2010
Yeah.
that book covers, and it's all it's more about people. It's really really not some ego trip about my bands playing gigs. It's not that. It's
Right.
about the people we met, the promoters, the venues, the other bands, the places we went, and the people that make up the scene, and then the kind of stories and anecdotes from the stuff we got up to at the time. So it was interesting. It was interesting and fun to write because I phoned up a bunch of my friends and guys from the time, and we went over it again. It's like, do you remember
Yeah.
when this happened? And then they would remember some stuff that I'd kind of forgotten, and we would develop the whole thing up again. And I was like, man, I'd forgotten that happened. That's brilliant. I got to put that in as well.
All
So
right.
even writing it was good fun. It was even
Right.
writing it was fun, and no, I really enjoyed that. That when that first came out, which was about 2 years ago now. It started moving pretty fast. Like about I don't know 2,000 copies shifted in the first couple of months. which I was
Right?
amazed.
Yeah.
I thought I might sell 10 or 20. It was just about, I'll do this for my mates.
Well, it's funny that was actually a question that I have for you, and I actually don't have it written down, so I'm glad you brought it up. I was curious because we do our books, which are all in the crime fiction slash true crime world, which is a
Awesome, yeah.
giant market,
Huge market, yeah.
and it is. Well, it turns out I don't know if this is true. Okay, so don't everybody don't be writing in that I'm misquoting shit. All right, but I have been told that it's 24% of the market and that number two in the market is only 9%. That's how
Wow.
much it leads. Everything else is 9% or less. And
Yeah,
the whole true crime thing, crime world,
yeah.
whatever, is 24%. But anyway,
I,
my question for you was exactly going to go there is that not only writing things particularly about music, all right, but then you're narrowing it down to rock and roll, but then you're narrowing it again to punk and hardcore.
yeah.
You have a very small audience, all
It's
right?
niche. It's
It's
niche, I'm
niche,
telling you.
but like I've always said about the stuff that we've put out on our label, Altercation Records, or when I'm doing the stuff in the bars and the clubs and the pubs. Yes, we have a very small target audience, but they are fiercely loyal.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think you found that's a piece of your success right there.
I reckon you're exactly right. It couldn't be more niche if I tried. I
Right.
mean, it really is. Murder mystery, I think, is where it's at. But I had to write about what I knew about, so I went
Oh,
with this
sure.
sort of
Yeah.
post-punk thing. And it is really specific and really niche. And like I say, I figured, you know, I'd be happy if it did 50 or 100 copies. I really don't care. Um, but it's going surprisingly well, and it's because the people that are into this are really into this. Obviously,
Yes.
you know yourself, but I also think there's been a bit of a change in the whole. The guys that were punkers and hardcore kids, if you like, are now of a certain age where they're getting back into books and vinyl
Sure.
records and other kind of tactile, real world things. I don't think they want to sit looking at a screen or a phone all day. I think they want something, and if it's something cool enough that they really, that kind of vibes with them, then they're gonna want to get hold of it.
Oh, well, I not only do I agree because it works on me, you know? And like your book here, for instance, the second that I did read, I've read several bands now, but I opened it right up to the Jukebox Romantics, you know?
Yeah,
And for me, it was so nice to hear these, I talked to Terry, Mike Terry, the singer. I'll talk to him maybe once or twice a year now, just casually, because he'll think of me and I'll think of him, some nonsense like that. But to read it and to listen to him tell his story for those
yeah.
4 or 5 pages was so magic and reminiscing to me.
It,
And it will be for anybody that's ever seen them live or bought an album or whatever. It's a little taste of their history. So yeah, there's something very romantic about that, if I can use the word twice, you know?
I think so. I think it resonates. I mean, the thing about Mike is he's a funny guy and he's an
Sure.
intelligent guy and he's got a lot to say. His chapter was real easy because he pretty much wrote that. I didn't have hardly anything to do with that, so he kind of made that very, very easy. But I reckon he could have written a whole book himself. He
Oh,
he kept
absolutely.
it to the point.
All of these bands could if they
Yeah,
had the chops to do it because the
yeah,
stories are great. Well, what were you? We were just chatting a little bit before, and I don't want to get off. Well, there is no subject here. We're just talking. Um, but like you would mention the one about wrestling catfish or some nonsense like that.
yeah. Well, like I say, every band wherever they're from have got little stories. In the UK and Europe, getting gigs in some old punk squat factory that's been blown up in the Second World War is kind of the thing, or playing in a pub. In the States, it gets more interesting, because they're playing. It's a massive country, and they're playing areas maybe they're not used to. There was a
Well, then,
band on
and
the label
and
called
and not to interrupt you, but here in the
yeah,
states too, every city, every state, every town is different.
yeah,
So you could, you're doing it in a person's basement one day, or somebody was telling me a story. I wish I could think of the band now, but there was a club out in Kansas somewhere, and all it was an old, abandoned toilet from a park or a parking thing that they renovated, and they would do shows in on the weekend. But real
Sure.
bands would come by this place and do shows
Sure.
because it was the only place for 100 miles you could see a show.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've played a few gigs in converted toilets. In fact, there's a venue near us in the town nearby, a town called Tunbridge Wells, and the venue was a public toilet. Then it got turned into a brass rubbing centre, would you believe?
Yeah.
And then it got turned into a small rock venue, and it's like it keeps winning this small venue award because it's like you can only get like 200 people in it, but it's the coolest venue you've ever
Well,
been
that's
to.
a big room. 200 people is a big room.
Yeah, yeah, and so we played there. I mean, we played there with all kinds of pretty big bands, and when that place is full and the sweat's running down the wall and everyone's jumping, that's an awesome night. So I don't mind playing a toilet, but I will tell you that dreaded Laramie story. So
Please.
well, they're one of the. They were touring in the States, and they were playing down south. And I don't remember. I think it was Alabama or Mississippi, but it was really, proper down south. And they were playing this festival, where the bands were playing in the evening, but there was stuff going on, stalls and stuff going on. Anyway, the locals, I'm not gonna call them rednecks. It's whatever their local culture is. They had this big tank, this big pool with these massive catfish swimming around. And before they'd let the band on the stage, one of them had to get in and wrestle, like try and grab a catfish. So the dreaded Laramie guitarist is in this pool trying to grab a catfish before they let them go on stage.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, and they called it catfish wrestling. Wrestling, we would say wrestling, but they're like wrestling. That to me that's funny. So we don't. That's not something I've ever had to do before playing a gig, but it just tickled me. I just thought, you know what, those crazy Americans.
Yeah. Well, I know I had just told you after that. I had told you the story, which I'll share with our guests here now. When we were in tour in Texas, and we did like several different stops, and it was one of these things. We had like 4 or 5 altercation label bands.
Mm-hmm.
One was the Svetlanas, who were very popular. A lot of people know them. But these kids
Right.
from Albany, New York, called New Red Scare, very, very nice kids. They're not going to sound it when I tell this crazy story about them, but one of them had a stun gun, the electrical stun gun that used to shock people into submission, right?
Like a taser.
A taser, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a gun. It doesn't have the things that shoot out, Anyways, somebody got it in their head, we can't compete with these Svetlanas who are selling all this merch, because the Svetlanas would kill it everywhere they went, and everybody would buy their merch. So I think it was Billy Gwynn, if I'm not mistaken, from New Red Scare, came up with this brilliant idea. Whoever buys the most New Red Scare merch gets to shock a member of the band with the stun gun. And it was great. Night after night, they would do this, and people would rush the merch table and try to outdo each other by buying as much stuff as possible, because whoever bought the most got to shock somebody.
That's harsh. That's a harsh way of doing things.
It added a whole new form of entertainment to the show. I'll tell you that. People loved it.
I'm not sure. We didn't try that. That's a good way to sell merch, but I'm not sure I want someone shocking me after the gig. Maybe, yeah, after the gig.
No, this was after the gig because L had to be over, But it was a hell of a tour. It was a hell of a tour. So
I bet it was. That sounds like fun. But I kind of, this is the thing, the comradeship, if you like, when it's the guys on tour together and all that. And I'm sure you get that in other, like maybe in sports teams, and other walks of life. But there's a certain kind of traveling comradeship to it as well, and that just kind of leads to different scrapes and different things going on.
Yes.
Especially when you roll into that the whole punk rock aspect of it, where when you're playing nice rock or metal clubs, you're probably going to get paid. You're probably going to maybe have a place to stay or get fed. That ain't always the case playing punk rock shows around Europe or whatever, sleeping on some piss-covered squat floor. It's like I say, it's good and bad. It's ups and downs, but it makes for some interesting stories.
Well, exactly, and that's what the book's made up about.
Sure, and it's interesting. I mean, most of these guys, were teens or 20s or maybe 30s. Now, of course, they're in their 40s, 50s. And it's interesting to me as well to see where they are now and what they're doing now and stuff like that. It, it's interesting a bit to me, Travis, that people like you and I are still kind of doing the same thing we were doing when we were 20 years old, but maybe, I don't know, maybe slightly different, maybe with a little less energy or maybe a wiser head. But people people carry those experiences with them, you know, and it resonates throughout their life, and it kind of molds the way they think about stuff. Not just politics. I'm talking about, you know, how they socially interact with people and stuff like
Oh,
that. You know.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like you were saying before about a thread, there's that thing of we're in the same club. We're of like minds, you know?
Yeah.
We understand what we've both gone through together with this. Like you can tell ridiculous stories and people will say, "Wow, that's wild," but they haven't lived it. They don't have a taste of it. So there is
Yeah.
that camaraderie. You know, it's like, yeah, for lack of a better word, you know, it's, you know, you're being in the military together, you're going through something together, and
Exactly.
your experiences, be they in London or traveling Europe or whatever, are the same experiences a kid's going to have here in America. You know, going from New York to New Jersey to Massachusetts to Texas to California, wherever. You know,
Yeah.
it's a very very common thread for sure.
And then getting shot with a stun gun at the end of the
Yeah.
gig. You absolute fools. But I love that. I'm a, I'm going to suggest that for some of the bands on the label. I got an idea, guys. Next time you're selling merch,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
they won't thank me for that, or you.
Yeah. You know what, David? Let's take a break for 1 second, okay?
Sure.
Then we're going to come back and we're going to go a little bit before these books as you've written and talk about your bands and
Okay.
your life. Okay?
Okay. No problem.
We'll be right back, everybody.
You are.
Hey, how you doing? It's me again, another nobody, Travis Myers. And today we're going to talk whiskey. I know most of you think of me as an all-American patriotic type guy, and you are right. But when it comes to whiskey and drinking whiskey, which I do, I always go for the Irish stuff. And my choice when it comes to the Irish stuff is Powers Irish Whiskey. Established back in 1791. It's a triple distilled, oak aged whiskey. Powers is simply magic. It also happens to be the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland, which has got to say something, because if it's good enough for the Irish, it's good enough for you. So the next time you raise a glass, fill it with Powers, and think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. This is a 2024 American Eagle gold coin, which I bought along with several others last year. I'm very happy to report that its value has gone up over 40% in the first year. See, I was encouraged to buy some gold by a financial advisor friend who suggested I be more diversified with my investments. She said gold and silver was a very safe place to park some money, as well as a good hedge against inflation. So I took her advice, and all I can say is I wish I had bought more, as it's been so very, very good to us so far. Now, I purchased these gold coins from the good people over at stackingboise.com, who could not have been nicer, more knowledgeable, or more helpful. Now, I'm certainly no financial expert, but I will say from experience, if you're looking to make an investment, buy yourself some gold. And some real gold that you could hold in your hand, just like this coin you see here. And if you do, then do like I did and get with the good folks over at stackingboise.com. I'm telling you, they're good people, they took good care of me, and they'll take good care of you. Again, that's stackingboise.com. And hey, tell them Travis sent you. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are back with my friend David Gamage,
Good
and
to be back.
what, what I'd like to ask you now, David. I mean, you yourself have been in 5 bands. Do I have that number right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've been in a few, but 5
Right.
kind of main ones, and then a few other bits and bobs with friends and
Well,
stuff.
I got a little list of what couch potatoes, Joey Fett, Rydell. Now Rydell did pretty well, right? You guys came to the States. You were traveling. I know. I'm
Well,
sorry to say you can. What was that? Was it 9/11 screwed you up, right?
that's yeah, which is pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Um, that was so yeah. So Rydell were on our for our third album. That we were kind of like an early sort of proto sort of emo band, you know, around the same kind of time as Get Up Kids and Braid and the Promise Ring and stuff like that. Whole wall of music, um, which was a rarer thing in the UK. Um, and we toured a lot in the UK and Europe. But we finally, and we had a bunch of labels over here and records out, but we finally signed to an American label. We signed to Headhunter Cargo, which was actually Blink 182's first
Yes.
label as well. And also, they did a bunch of releases for Chris Broach of Braid and a bunch of other pretty decent bands you'd have heard of. Um, and we, the promo for the album was doing quite well, and they booked us a tour all down the East Coast from Boston through New York, all the way down. I think it was like 2.5 weeks all down the universities and rock clubs and stuff. And we were like, I can't tell you how excited we were.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, we're going to go and play in America. You know, we're going to do a rock tour in America. We're going to, because driving around Europe in your beaten up old van, you know, and sort of piling in and out of places is fun. But we were like, yeah, you know, we're going to walk through the airport with our guitars and play. We had radio station interviews lined up and all kinds of cool shit. We were quite stoked about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 2 days before we booked the flights, hired the van. A band called Hunter Gatherer were going to support us for the tour. They're a sort of post-punk band from Athens in Georgia, you know, down sort of Atlanta way, and they were great. So they were going to bring most of the gear, and we were just going to tag along with them, you know, and play the shows together. Anyway, 2 days before, it was 9/11. Yeah. And obviously, you know, the guys are phoning up, you know, turn on the TV. You won't believe this shit that's happening. Turn on the TV. Obviously, terrible, terrible, terrible event, and everyone's stunned and blown away by the whole situation. And at the back of my mind, incredibly selfishly, I'm thinking, damn, I was going on tour in 2 days' time.
Yeah.
Obviously, that got totally cancelled. We could, as it goes, you know, the no fly thing. We could have done the second and third week of the tour, but what's the point? You know, people weren't coming out. The whole thing was kind of ruined. And it sounds terrible. It sounds really selfish, but because of that, we didn't get to come at all and play in America because the label we were on about a year later kind of went under. They didn't do so well and they kind of went under. And then we spoke with a few other labels and we did some more releases, but it never really turned into a proper US tour. And then that band broke up. So that, you know, that was kind of a bittersweet, a bit of a roller coaster. You know, we had that opportunity and it got taken from us. But on a more positive note, you know, we did a whole bunch of. They did help us put a third and a fourth record out. You know, it did actually help us get some more shows around Europe and stuff, around the UK and Europe. So that was all fine. And the guys actually that I've been in bands with since I was a kid, we're all still friends, you know, and it's some of those guys from that band, Rydell, that are in my current band with me. You know, we were called Come the Spring, but we're actually called the Atlantic Union Project now.
Oh, so these are the same band, then it's not two different bands.
It's the same band, but it's a different singer. So we had a great singer, but he was always like hanging off of pipes in the roof or light fixings and stuff and falling over and hurting himself. And he kind of lost it. And for various reasons, he left the band. So we carried on writing music and we didn't have a singer for a while. And then we got a American friend of mine called Craig Cirinelli, who lives in Boonton, New Jersey. I mean, not too far from you guys. He's a great singer. He sings in a few bands over there. And he said, okay, you know, I'll do it. So we set this thing up initially as a project. That's why it's called the Atlantic Union Project.
Right.
And the record, the album is called 3,482 Miles, because that's how far it is between his house and my house.
That's
So
clever.
we'd write the music and send him the tapes, and he'd put the vocals on and send them back.
Right.
Anyway, so that, we got to play a few gigs and make some videos and stuff and have some fun. But
Let me ask you, you were talking about, losing this American tour, which, at the time crushed you. We're going back,
yeah,
what, almost 25 years now, right?
we're going back some time. It was bad
So
then, but
that really hurt you as a band. That hurt you as a young guy who wanted to do this thing, right?
sure,
But is for Europeans, okay, coming to America, is that like the holy grail of rock and roll?
pretty
Be-
much.
because for us, for most of our bands, touring Europe is the dream,
Yeah,
you know?
I know, and that's why. So that's actually that worked out. That worked out pretty well for my bands, Travis, because we play a lot in the UK. We play what we would call local shows in the UK, particularly London and Brighton and all around the UK a lot. But whenever a decent American band came over, we'd often tour with them.
Yes.
So sometimes that'd just be around the UK, and sometimes that'd be around Europe. But we did 2 or 3 tours with Hot Water Music, and we did play with, like I say, No Effects, Sam I Am,
Mhm.
Green Day a couple of times. One of the last tours we did was with Piebald, and they're such a, they all these. I say all these guys. Most of these guys are good guys. They're not.
Sure.
They're just real friendly, down to earth guys, and we'll have a laugh. One or two are kind of a bit rock starry. Piebald are really sort of happy go lucky pop punk guys, but they weren't very happy on tour, to be honest.
Oh, really?
A lot No, a lot of the shows we played with them were up in Scotland, either in the north of England or Scotland,
Hmm.
and it was in the winter. So it was either raining or snowing.
Right.
And these guys had come over exactly that. It's like, we're playing in the UK, we're playing in Europe. But it was a bit shit. It was, 50 people at a gig. Maybe like a good gig was 100. And every day was cold and wet. And I think, literally 3 or 4 gigs in, I think they'd had enough. The shine had worn off. So it's not always as good as you think it's going to be.
Well, and that happens here in the States too. People don't realize, like, we've done many shows, bands who were, in my opinion, in my world, I would consider to be really big, who are coming
Mhm.
from California, but when they get to New York, they just don't have the following,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so they're really disappointed. They're like, I just played for 800 people in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and, 50, 60, 80 people showed up here at serious venues, but they don't have the same local draw. They just don't,
They
you
don't
know?
have the pull. And that's why,
Exactly.
but that's, and I kind of say to the bands on the label, it's like the best way you must tour with other bands. You got to work
Absolutely.
together and support each other, because you can help each other. That to me is a massive part of the whole punk rock mentality,
Yep.
where the community helps each other to succeed. That goes without saying, but I think another important thing about being in a band, there's a certain kind of hardness that's required. It's like, because one night I was going to say 50. One night you might play to 20 people or 10 people. You might.
I've been to shows where there were less than 10, you know?
Exactly.
We've all
Exactly.
been there.
And then literally the very next night you'll play to 200 or 500 or 800, and it will go mad. And then the next night again, you're playing in a pub to 10 or 20 people.
Absolutely.
If you can't turn up and give your all anyway, it's got to come from the heart. It's like, this is the difference between music is not just technical ability. Music is not just, I'm a pretty good musician and I can play scales and I can play this stuff. You got to feel it. You got to believe it night after night after night.
Yes.
And that's almost more important than being a good musician. It's like, you've really got to go for it for yourself. And
Absolutely.
if there's 2 people in the crowd digging it, you've just got to go for it.
But those are 2 fans that you could make,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly,
And
exactly. And
you
then
gotta
they get
turn
to shoot
everybody
you
into
with
a
a
fan.
stun gun or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's kind of, that's my new thing. No,
Well,
so that there's a certain amount of heart involved in that kind of thing. But there's some fun shows too. We when Alice Donut first came over to the UK from New York, we played at one of my it's like only my 5th or 6th show with a band I was in called Couch Potatoes, kind of a Descendants style, pop punk band, if you like. A bit more riffy, but But Alice Donut were amazing. They were one of my heroes at the time, and we played this club in Brighton called the Richmond. I don't know, probably 200 or 300 people, totally packed, and decent sound. You know, when you're a new band and you get to play a proper stage with a proper sound engineer mixing, it's like, well, this is what it's meant to sound like. You know, it sounds
Exactly.
pretty cool. So that was awesome, and I kind of, you know, to me, things like that meant a lot. We played with Chemical People. Um, we played with No Effects a few times. The first time they weren't very well known, and we played a little pub in London. By the time they came back and we played with them again, you know, it was some massive venue, and they had their album out at that time was Heavy Petting Zoo, and they had these blow up sheep. There's like a sheep on the cover, and they call
Yep.
it the fuck you, basically. So everyone had got these blow up sheep and was banging around like balloons, and people are jumping around, you know, banging around blow up sheep and stuff. It, it was cool. I mean, any gig with them is fun anyway, because they turn up with their brass section and everyone's jumping around. There's more people on the stage than there is in the
Yes.
audience. So that's,
Yes.
you know, that kind of thing's fun. The first time, like I say, we played a few times with Green Day on a couple of different early stuff. This is Kaplunk, you know, their first singles and
Yes.
Kaplunk,
Yes.
and this is just before, actually, just when they signed to Warner Brothers for Dookie.
Mhm.
Um, so the first time they came over, it was actually um, Billy Joe and Mike and Trey were staying with us, and it was Trey's birthday. It was his 18th birthday while he was over. So
Oh,
we
well, there
played a
you
bunch
go.
of shows, and then they had a couple of nights off, and then we played like a Christmas Eve party with them. You know, just a bunch of friends, and again, I don't know, 150 people maybe were at that party that night, watching Green Day play, like totally, like, you know, no stage, like standing right next to you, and
Yes.
it was awesome fun. It was a hell of a Christmas party, but I tell you, the number of people who say to me, "Oh yeah, I was at that." I was like, "Man, you can't have been at that." There was only I can tell you the names of everyone who was at that gig. You know, it's like,
Yep.
but anyway, it was cool
Well,
fun.
there's a funny thing about that, and I know you'll relate to it right away. I always try. I don't know where I got this from, if I read it or somebody told it to me or whatever. But you have to see. We all as people have to see something or hear something 9 times to remember it. Somehow nine is the magic number. I don't know where
Okay.
that came from. This is what I heard, and there's something true to that where if a story is repeated or if it has to do with putting stickers up in every bathroom that you go to, you
Yep.
know, and just the constant promotion and letting people know who you are again and again and again, how many times you will have people that will say, oh yeah, I know that band.
I know that guy. Yeah, yeah, I know
You
that
don't know that
band.
band. You've never seen them. You don't know a single song, but they can't say no because in the back of their head it exists,
Yeah.
you know? And so there's some
Yes.
truth to that, you
There
know?
sure there is, and you know, just on the label side of things, when I'm working with other bands and trying to get, you know, getting them on the label and trying to get them better known, is part of the reason I set the label up. I mean, early on, it was because I was in a band and a lot of my friends were in bands, and I figured we can help each other and we can
Mhm.
help touring back. Okay. But now I've seen both sides of it, you know, being in the band and also running the label. And I kind of know what each side requires and how to get the best from it. So, and, you know, making a record, manufacturing a record that's easy. But
Yes.
distributing and marketing it, you know, all the pushing it, all the marketing it, that's the work. That's where you need the effort and the contacts and stuff. The band have got all the talent and that's great. But if a band hasn't also got a certain amount of kind of hard work and drive, then they're not going to get far.
Not at all.
You really need to, you know, we'll make t-shirts for them, we'll make stickers for them, we'll make stuff as well as the records for them and promote it all we can, push the videos. But if they're not willing to do it as well, um,
No.
then
Brother, brother, I have lived it, and I know exactly what you're saying. And it's now this is gonna sound like I'm talking bad, I'm trashing bands. I am not. Okay? It's just human nature. You know, there's nothing you
uh-huh,
can do about it. And so many people, really, really brilliant, talented people, amazingly talented people, okay?
uh-huh,
But they don't understand what they're biting into when they do, you know, and it turns out to be too much work for them. I mean, we've signed guys who were really phenomenal acts, and 6 months later they're breaking up because they can't handle the workload. They didn't realize it was going to disrupt their lives too much. They didn't realize. One of the guys that help me out, Dustin from Say Hello to the Angels. Okay, it's an Austin, Texas band,
Uh-huh.
phenomenal band, really talented guys. But he used to make me laugh. He was their original band was larger, called the Riddling Kids. I don't know if you remember them. They were all
Okay.
over MTV and stuff back in the day,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But he used to say, getting signed, all that means is you were this tall, you may now get on the ride.
yeah,
That's it. The ride hasn't even begun yet. The getting everybody dreams about being signed, even to a small boutique label like ours, you
yeah.
know. But that's not when you give up. That's when you got to try
And
two, three,
that's when it
four, five
starts.
times as hard. That's
Oh
the
yeah,
beginning, exactly.
oh yeah. And then the next level. I mean, that is the case, but with kind of with independent labels, kind of a small rock or punk label, we'll support them and we'll try and help them out as best we can. But right from the get go, we can have a conversation and have an understanding. We have got some bands on the label. Maybe they're older guys or they're more of a musical project that we know. Okay, these guys are not going to tour their asses off. We know that up
Yes.
front. They're going to maybe do a couple of long weekends, and
Yeah.
put out maybe a record a year or something. And we're fine with that so long as we know. Okay, we know that. So there's no point in going massively out your way. Other bands say to you, "We want a gig. We want a gig all the time." So then you book them on tours and you get things going. And it's then if you kind of get to a point where they let you down or let themselves down, then that kind of sucks because you've gone to the effort, you've gone to the expense,
Sure.
and they don't follow through. And that's thankfully that is quite rare, but that does happen. And that is often the cause of bands breaking up. I mean, quite a
Sure.
few of the bands on the label that have broken up have been exactly for that
But
reason.
we've had bands come off of, again, for a small band, an up and coming band, a punk rock band, going back 10 years ago when things were still hot, coming off of, or 20 years ago when things were hotter, all right, coming off of something like Warp Tour, all right,
Yeah.
doing doing a week, 10 days, 15 days on Warp Tour, and breaking up because it was too difficult. Breaking up.
You
This
do
is
walk,
the,
you
what are you
made it.
doing, man? This is
That's
the
the
beginning
time.
for you.
Yeah.
This is the beginning, you know? This is not where you break up. This is where you start. But you can't explain it to them, you know? And it's so often they do break your heart. But like anything, you get tougher and you realize, like you say, you realize who you're dealing with and what their role in the label is going to be, or their role in their own future is going to be.
Yeah. And I don't, honestly, I don't hold that against anyone. People have got to make a certain commitment. A
Yes.
lot when you sign to like a major label and you can try and make a living out of it, that's one thing. But most of these guys have got other jobs as well. So when you take that into account, you kind of understand it. We've had a few, um, who've gone on tour and then an opportunity's come up to play a festival, like a massive festival, like 2 days later.
Mhm.
And instead of hanging around and playing the extra one or two gigs to play the festival, they're like, oh, I've got to be back for work. I kind of get it, but there's a level of commitment required. If you're going to be in a band, be in a band. It's like, but
Well, exactly. That's exactly it. If you're going to do it, then do it, or don't waste everybody else's time, you know.
yeah,
And
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 it's
you
kind of
could have,
that. And in the fire still burns. I mean, literally the title, the fire still burns, is because the inspiration, if you like, that drives these people is still there, and that's why they do it. So 95% of that book is positive, you know, dynamic inspiration.
yeah.
But you always get the flip side. So there are a couple of stories in there exactly of that, of bands on tour who are like, you know what, we can't do this anymore. We're done. And it might have been a particular incident or something like Joshua. One of the bands I'm talking with in there and writing about was a band called Joshua, who signed to Doghouse, and this is when Doghouse were becoming massive. They had All American Rejects, they had stuff like this. I mean, Dirk was selling a lot of records. He signed up Joshua and put them on tour, and it was just, yeah, they're a great band, but it was just a bit much. It was just a bit much, and they had a bit of an altercation on on the tour and stuff like that, and kind of fell apart. But they're not the only one. There's Kyoto Drive as well. Kyoto Drive were doing a tour for us in Europe. And actually, that was one of these festival situations. I think it was Paramore or someone were playing at this festival, like 20, 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And it was 2 days later, and they're like, we've got to be back for work. And I'm like, man, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Phone in sick, phone in sick. Play that gig. If you do nothing else with your band, play that gig. You'll always remember what fun it would be.
Yes.
But people have commitments and stuff, and you live with that.
And then with bands too, as you know, you're not dealing with an individual. You're dealing with 3, 4, 5. You know,
Yeah.
one of these ska bands, you might be dealing with 8 different people. You
Yeah,
know,
and you're only as strong as your weakest link. If as
exactly.
soon as someone misses their girlfriend, or
Are you familiar with that? They used to tour Europe. In fact, they used to when they were with us, a band called Born to Lose. They used to tour Europe. Excuse me, like twice a year. They loved going to Europe. They were super hot over there. In
yeah,
fact, I think 1 or 2 of them married German or Ukrainian women and brought them back to the States with them.
yeah.
But it was, I want to say it was Ben, the guitarist from Born to Lose, who had told me we were having a similar discussion, as band guys do. We talk about bands, right? And he says, Travis, he says, and they were older, more seasoned band, been around the block a couple times. We put out their what 4th and 5th album, I think, is what we did with them. But he says you can't expect too much from people. He was telling me, this is your shortcoming. Travis's shortcoming is you can't expect too much from people, because if you do, that's why you're disappointed.
Well, maybe he has a point.
Yeah.
If you don't set your sights too high, you can't be upset. But then, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing properly. Why even begin?
I agree with
So
you 100%. Yeah.
it's like I want to. Whether it's a record or a book or anything I'm going to do, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to bother doing it, I want to do it as well as I can do it.
Yes.
And I really don't like half-assing things. And I kind of, whilst I accept other people have got their own issues, time is the most precious thing of all. And if someone's going to half-ass it, then I can't give them much time.
Funny
That's
you
just a
say
fact
that.
of
I
it.
say all the time. I tell people that all the time, that time is our only enemy.
Yeah,
Time
yeah,
is our only enemy. We can conquer everything if we have enough time. Sadly, we never do.
we
You
never
know
do. So you got to make the most. Yeah.
exactly,
And
exactly.
I say that now, and I warn you because I'll sit here jawing for hours about this shit. So if you don't stop me, you're going to have no time left. So I just warn you. Oh, dear. Um,
So for your whole life now, when did you start? When was your first band? When did you start out?
um, well, literally when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old, I was actually more into sort of metal. I was into Thin Lizzy and Iron Maiden and AC/DC and all this stuff. But I had a few mates who introduced me to the Damned and a few sort of punky bands, and they wanted to form a punk rock band. So literally when I was like 16, I started playing guitar in this punk rock band called the Yobs. And we were shit. We were shit. We couldn't play, but we had some fun. We had, there was a basement and we played a few gigs and our friends turned up and it was kind of fun. And it gave me the bug. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn to play properly or better and then do something good. So by the time I was about 18, I could play, and I had a bunch of mates who I'd been to school with who could also play, and we started out doing things like Dead Kennedys covers and Descendants covers and Hard-Ons and stuff like that, and then we developed our own style from that, and we never looked back. I mean, we played some because there were less bands then, and obviously this is before the internet. You're talking in the 90s, like the early 90s. There was no internet, there was no mobile phones, so things like fanzines and flyers and stickers and word of mouth at gigs was important. And if a gig was going on, it kind of, you'd go around and stick up posters and it got round and then everyone would show up and they'd get into it and enjoy themselves because the next one might not be for another 3-6 months.
Yes.
So there was a certain kind of electric atmosphere to that. And we played a bunch of those. I mean, we've probably played over 1,000 gigs now, but the first the first few were so electric and so amazing, and I just never lost that bug. For me, it was almost an addiction. You know, I'm not been into anything else. That's my addiction, if you like,
Yeah.
playing gigs and that kind of feeling from it, that elation you get. And I kind of part of what made me start the label and help other bands and even write these books is to kind of share that feeling and help other people get that feeling. Because I tell you, slightly on a tangent, Travis, but you know, sometimes I'll read a book about a big rock band, you know, on tour in a tour bus playing stadiums and shit, and I'll think, yeah, that's nice, you know, that's lovely, you lucky bastard, that's nice, you make a living from that. But what's more realistic, what I can empathise more with, is a bunch of guys who practice in their garage and then go play a rock club or go play
Yeah.
you know, that could be anyone. That could be you, me, guy down the pub. That could be
Absolutely.
anyone. And I really think if other people read about that or experience that, they can empathise and they can be part of it as much as any person. You're not some rock star, but you're someone who's, you know, there's a certain electricity to be gained from that. And I kind of, you know, that's what I think that's what's kept me going doing
I
this for
think
like
there's
40
something
years now.
for all of us, and like myself, not being a musician, but being so attached to music as the behind the scenes guy, you know, the
Yeah.
guy who put on the festivals, who put on the tours, who did whatever it was that it was, you know, and the smaller shows too, is there's that sexy attraction of the next show, you know?
You're
It
only
is.
as good as the next war.
No matter how great it was tonight, well, we got to do it again, man. We got to try
Yeah.
it again, you know? And even the ones where, like you say, yeah, you know, 2 dozen people showed up, but they loved you. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be 5 dozen tomorrow, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly.
And the next city, the next venue, the next whatever it may be. And I tell you what, I give all the credit in the world to the journeymen out there. I assume you use that word in England too. You know, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
a, a traveling a traveling union guy who can go and do his job from city to city to city.
Yeah.
In
Exactly
that
that.
in that vein, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hudson Falcons, big New Jersey band. They go to Europe many all the times. What's his name? Help me out there. He's a good friend of mine. I can't think of his name right now. Mark, Mark from Hudson Falcons, Mark Linsky. He's got it down where he is the Hudson Falcons, but he's got 100 Falcons all over the world. So when he goes on tour, he
You can
can
call in.
literally, you know, have 4 or 5 band members get him to the Mississippi River, change over, have 4 or 5 more band members go. When he
Wow.
goes to Europe, he doesn't bring a band with him. He might bring a guy or 2 guys, but he'll have 3 guys waiting for him in Germany or the UK or whatever that know all his songs. They're ready to go. They've all played together.
That's
It's
incredible.
He's brilliant, but it's because he's been doing it for 30 years, you know, and
So,
he's got it
I mean,
down.
that is brilliant and that's interesting. So long as he can still capture, you know, those guys can still capture that feeling. But I reckon what it just clicks when you've been doing it for a while. It just clicks, and I reckon most bands can. Um, I think that's good for him. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, he's a sharp character. I like
And
Mark
that,
very
I've
much.
got to say, I mean, that's again in the Fire Still Burns post COVID. A lot of bands had a situation where you know what you might normally think was the standard is no longer the standard. You know, some guys were recording in different countries, some guys were recording in different states or whatever, and then still making it work and still putting things together. So there's a couple of things again I wrote about in there that aren't your normal tour story, but they're more of a studio thing with guys in different countries, and then it's kind of looking at the the technology, if you like. I'm a bit of a luddite, so to me it was interesting and but not really understandable. But
Right.
how they were able to do it and make it work, recording in these digital, you know, but distant situations. It's interesting. That's all post-COVID shit, really. It's interesting you say that about touring, but if someone's still got the drive to create music that way and it works for them and it's still got the spark, then go for it, you know?
Well, I'll tell you too, and I know we've chatted about this before. Um, you know, sadly, okay, and I'm not being pessimistic at all, okay. Um, rock and roll in all forms and genres has taken a hell of a beating over the last 30, 40 years, And I hate to say it's dying because I don't think it ever will. There's always going to
Mm.
be, again, that fire that burns. There's going to be creative people that have to put it out.
Yeah.
But man, did this COVID change things? Did it crushed? I mean, for us now, there's so few venues left. You know,
Yeah.
there's all the magazines are gone. Like you were talking about
Yeah.
fanzines, I can't think of a single one. And even all the larger ones that were national here in the United States, almost all gone,
Yeah.
or completely unaffordable. Because things like Rolling
Yeah.
Stone is not a real
No,
magazine.
you can't. You can't. That's a very practical point you make there, actually, Travis. It's kind of so we've got over 800 press contacts, if you like. People we would send records to or whatever for reviews and stuff like that. But you know what? They're less than 50 of them are reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to know so many promoters, so we could hook up gigs and a tour, not too difficult. None of those places exist. None of those,
Yeah.
1 in 10 of those venues exist, and maybe 1 in 20 of those promoters, because most of them have just given up. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had to try and build up again an entirely new set of contacts, entirely new, and that's taking time and effort, and frankly, isn't as effective. But we'll still keep trying. But my advice to a lot of bands now is, look, if you really are going to go for it, you're going to have to get yourself a booking agency. Get yourself a tour agent or something, because it's all about who you know now. And maybe you have to
Absolutely.
sort of.
Yeah.
I hate it because this goes against everything that's alternative or punk rock, but sometimes you've almost got to buy your way onto tours and stuff like that, and that sort of shit that just sucks on
It
principle.
does. It absolutely does.
You
And
know.
we've been there. We've been there and we've played that game. And one of the reasons that we started our own thing, oh geez, I think the last one we did was 2017 or 2018, where we had a thing called Upstart Fest. Typical
Uh-huh.
punk rock word upstart. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not.
Yeah.
And we would go. It started out as just it started out originally as a 1 day show. The next year we did 4 days. The next year we were doing 2 weeks, and we would go from Baltimore, Maryland, all the way up to Portland, Maine, and we'd hit
Uh-huh.
every city on the way. But we'd do it with a dozen bands. All right, which seems like a hell of a show, and it
That's a lot.
was. But we would take um, you know, have like three or four headliners. Again, these mid-level bands, I should say, not big bands, but we'd
You
have
can swap around a bit.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they would run the entire tour, but then we'd have, of course, several bands that we knew that were good from each of these locations,
Yeah.
and they would swap over. So if you kicked ass in Boston but couldn't get a show in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
this was your chance. And you knew you were going to get paid. Knew you were going to get taken care of. It was a
Yeah.
nice little tour. And then we'd
Awesome.
also always at every single show, we would give a little unknown local band a shot, and then we would take them. So if you played in Philly, then we'd take you to Brooklyn, or
Sure.
if you played in Baltimore, we'd take you to New Jersey. Whatever the thing was, we'd give you a second show as a thank you kind of thing, and that was great. And we got picked up by our biggest sponsor was Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer.
Cool.
Well, that was great until we lost that just to get back to the business end of it. We
Yeah.
lost that contact. All right. And they were like $13,000 a year they gave us to put on the show. And without that, after growing so large, we
Yeah.
couldn't go backwards anymore. And
No,
it
that's the
killed
problem.
us.
You
It
can't even
wasn't our
cover.
only sponsor, but it was our biggest sponsor, and it just
Yeah.
gutted it, man. And it
Yeah.
was, but if there's no money, you just
Well,
can't do these things,
people need
unfortunately.
gas and people need food, and
Yeah.
and you can't always rely on the promoters or the fans to put you up. So it's kind of, it does cost money. If you're selling merchandise and getting paid, you can kind of cover it, but you can never be sure. There's no guarantees.
Of course.
Um, yeah, and it's what the industry needs. I mean, so in the UK, it's an old school friend of mine We've set this thing up called the Music Venue Trust, and it's a charity effectively that supports small venues,
Right.
like breeder venues, and it puts money towards putting not just punk rock, all sorts of music, but it puts money towards supporting these small venues and keeping them open. And so when there's some big festival gig and the booking agency are charging $3 extra on every ticket just for the hell of it, it's trying to call out those people and go, look, you bastards,
Yeah.
put $1 per ticket towards this type thing, and trying to almost sort of shame them into doing the right thing that they know they should do. Because if there weren't the small venues, you'd never have these rock acts, the big
No,
acts filling venues. So
absolutely.
so the Music Venue Trust is going quite well now, and now it owns and runs about 8 or 9 venues, and it's supporting stuff all the time and getting bigger and bigger. And we there's a page about it in each of my books because we support them and chip something into them as well. But that's going really well in the UK, and we need it. We really need it in the UK because there's no government support. You just turn
No.
up at a club and you only get what the promoter gives you. And you know, it wouldn't be the first time you've had to chase a promoter down the road because he's decided he didn't want to give you the $100 he promised you for the whole night. It's like that shit happens a lot. It happens less in Europe, which is partly, I think, why American bands and stuff say, oh, let's go and tour in Europe. And UK bands do, let's go and tour in Europe. In Europe, the governments support the youth clubs. A lot of the rock clubs are youth clubs. They're called Jugendzentrum. And they give them a certain budget to pay for entertainment.
Oh,
So
good,
whenever
good.
and that's purely a European thing. Whenever you go over there, you're going to get 200 or 300 bucks a night and food and a place to stay and good beer. You're going to get that guaranteed. So even UK bands tour more in Europe than they do in the UK because touring in the UK is hard work, and the same as America. If people know you and they come out, you'll do okay. But if you go to some cities
Well,
where they don't know you, unless you've got a good local support band, you're going to be in trouble.
how many times, I don't know if it happens in the UK often,
Uh-huh.
it's happened to us several times here, I'm sorry to say, where you're going, usually with somewhat larger venues, and they'll literally call you up a week or two before the show and say, oh, your pre-sales are lousy, we're canceling the show.
Yeah,
Because they don't
that
have enough pre-sales. And,
sure.
especially in the punk rock world, the punk rock kids, your 16, 18, 20-year-old kid is not buying pre-sale tickets. He's buying at the door,
He's
you know?
turning up on the day. If they're coming at all, they're coming on the day. And this
Exactly.
is kind of another thing. Again, I'm going to sound like some old curmudgeon if I'm not careful. But so obviously, as well as playing gigs, I used to go to gigs all the time. Now I maybe get to a gig maybe once a month. Not that often. And the thing that freaks me out the most about it actually is the price. It's unbelievable, the price of tickets. I mean, I just won't go to some big festival or something. I'm just not going to pay that price. I'm so used to seeing amazing bands for like $5.
Yes.
I'm just not going to pay 50 or 100 or $200 to see the same bands. I'm just not going to do it. So, um, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a skinflint. Maybe I'm just tight. But there's that. I can't believe how the ticket price can be so high. Like if you try and buy a shirt, it's going to be $20, $30. I remember when we were selling shirts for £5 each,
Yep.
and still making money on it. I mean, I just can't believe how expensive things have got. So I mean, I can believe it because I press vinyl, and that's not cheap.
Yes.
We print books by the thousand, and that's just not cheap either. So I'm a realist, but I'm also back in the day. I don't know if you remember, but all the punk rock records used to have "Pay No More Than" written on them.
Yes,
This
yes.
single "Pay No More Than" 199, or this album "Pay No More Than." I'm not suggesting it has to be that, but you really don't have to rip people off. You really
I,
don't.
I
And
agree
again, that's
100%.
part of punk rock.
In our places, for my listeners that don't know, I know we owned two pubs, Snapper McGee's pubs, and one was in New York, one was in Connecticut. All
Uh-huh.
right. And, we were, again, a pub that did music. We were not a legitimate music venue. However, we never, for the 22 years that we operated there, never charged more than $5. And we didn't
Wow.
care who it was that was coming through. Conversely, every dime, every penny that came off the door always went to the bands.
The bands, yeah, that's
Now
as it
some
should be.
band might get a little bit more than others. We would
Yeah,
always favor the traveling band more than the
sure.
local band, you
Well, that
know.
makes sense.
Um, but we never did because, again, I thought it was not only unfair to the customer, I think it was unfair to the scene to to hurt people, to rip people off. And sure, yes, there would
Yeah,
be more money for the bands, but you would have half the people show up,
sure.
you
You
know?
can't. you shouldn't have to explain that. I mean, the venue can give the door money to the bands, or certainly most of it, and make its money at the bar. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it's always been. And then it's a win-win situation, and everyone's happy. But kind of, I, it gets harder. There used to be a lot of sort of one-off gigs that people would put on, at the local college or the local hall. That's more difficult now because there's so much legislation and so much bullshit. You've got to get a PA and a sound guy and stuff. So you're only really going to put gigs on in pubs and clubs and places where they've got all that in place. And then if you are giving a half the door money to the venue as well, that kind of negates the purpose. The bands need to earn something for their effort.
Or these really selfish venues, larger venues, where they want to take a cut of your merch.
Yeah,
You know,
that's unbelievable. That's a new
that's
thing.
shameful. What's
It's,
that?
it's shameful. That's fraudulent, if you ask me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something obviously you hear a lot about now, but that is definitely a new thing. I never heard about that.
Yeah.
Even going back 5 years, I never heard about that. But that is common practice now. Uh, I certainly would not want to play venues like that. I mean, I guess larger bands, their label puts them in places and they have no choice. But the whole point of being an alternative band, if you like, post punk or whatever, is you just don't put up with shit like that. That goes against everything you're doing. What's the point? Fugazi, for example, what massive band. Can you see Ian Mackay ever putting up with something like that? I don't
No.
think he's ever played a gig where the ticket's been more than $5, and most of them have been free for charities.
Yeah.
That is hardcore. That's punk rock. It's like you shouldn't have to explain things like that to people. And if you've got to explain that to the venue, it's the wrong venue. This
But
is
unfortunately, you need a place to play. You know, and
yeah,
again, it might be 100 miles to the next one. So I mean, so many times, bands are just so beaten down by this system that governs them now. Because where else are you going to go? That's the only place in town. That's the
yeah, I
only place.
guess.
And what we've always found too, I think you'll probably agree, and I'm sure it's the same in England and in Europe, that the secondary markets were always so much more friendlier and financially better to us. It's better to play Long Island than to play Manhattan.
Yeah,
In New
because
York
they got
City.
less choice. They got less choice. Like
Yeah.
we would play in London and Brighton and stuff, and luckily we were kind of local, so people would come out. But if we play little towns in the middle of nowhere, out in the boondocks, it would be packed
Yeah.
because they had no other choice. They'd see one band for 6 months, so they'd all
Sure.
come out. And honestly, they were some of the best shows we ever played. These are towns you've never heard of, with bands you've never heard of, but they're the best nights ever.
Sure.
But that's just how it goes. And that's what makes it so. If you've got a hardcore heart and you're interested in it and your fire still burns, that is how you get the good nights. You just keep soldiering on, you find the good things.
Never quit. You
Never
never quit.
quit.
Yeah.
Don't let them grind you down.
That's right. Don't let the bastards get you down. On that note, my friend, I think we'll call it a show. I'm
Okay.
so happy to talk to you. Please,
It's
everybody
been
out
fun.
there, do yourselves a favor, all you rock and roll fans. The fire still burns. All right. Where can everybody get a hold of you? Oh, there you go. He's got the other one up there.
These two, these are both available through earthislandbooks.com. But you know what? You can go into Waterstones or Barnes and Noble or your local mom and pop, and you can order them because they're you probably won't see them on the shelf, but you can certainly order them
I got mine on the Amazon. That's
on
where I got mine.
Amazon. So you can some people don't like Amazon, but you can go onto
Yeah.
Amazon and you can get it in your own country. So there's
Yes.
no shipping,
I
no
tell you, I
expensive.
tell you, I am not a fan of Amazon myself for what they do to the smaller guy and to my country and everything like that. And I don't want to be a hypocrite, but the fact of the matter is, it's cheaper. It shows up the next day, and they have it. So
It's,
often, I'm going to go off on a whole nother tangent now. We're trying to say goodbye here, but the way they get you is it's the only place you can find it half the time.
it's
You know
so convenient. It's so
exactly.
convenient,
Yeah.
and they've gotten wires. Amazon have gotten wires to little independent labels and stuff. Amazon have set this because Amazon now own Goodreads, which is
Yes.
where you get most of the book reviews.
Yep.
And Amazon own a lot of the reseller market online now. So the little independent guys, and even some people might, self-publish a book uh, get 50 or 100 copies out, but Amazon might give them a service to put that on Amazon.
Yes.
So, everyone can diss it and say it's a pain and it's the devil, but the fact is, it is convenient. And if you can get how we have it set up, is you can get that book in your own country with local shipping.
Yes.
So you could live on the moon and you could order that book locally at the click of a switch. Our whole thing, whether it's a record or a book or whatever, our whole thing is we want to get it out to the kids that want it or the people that want it to the widest audience possible in the cheapest possible way. So we put it this way: we use Amazon, they don't use us, we use them.
There you
And so
go.
long as you look at it like that, it's like, okay, while you're useful to us, we're going to make use of you.
Well, and on that note too, it has been a great equalizer for small independent artists and independent labels, independent authors, independent
Exactly.
publishers. It's putting a hurt on the big guy in a way. You know, it's just unfortunate that again they have their uh, own things we don't disagree that we do disagree with. You know,
Yeah,
so
exactly. And you wanna take the best from any options. It's like things might in the age of the internet and mobile phones and all the social media. There's an awful lot of instant information out there.
mhm.
So in theory, you think putting on a gig or putting out a product, a record or a book or whatever is much easier. But it isn't, because although you can get the information out there, you're sailing through this absolute quagmire of shit. There's so much
Yes,
mediocre rubbish. To find those gems, you've really, really got to search. Now, fine, then do the searching. It's work when you find something like that. It's special and it's worth the effort. But like I say, it's not always easy. Just use it for what it is. You can. Those books are from earthislandbooks.com. You can buy them direct. All our records is engineerrecords.com. Again, you can buy them all direct. You can also buy them from all your local shops, but you can buy them direct. Whenever possible, I would say support the small and independent, support the
absolutely,
underground, the whole
absolutely.
DIY thing. Obviously, people want to do that. Um, I will just say there's a couple of books. I know this won't be out till getting toward the summer, but there's a couple of books coming out around the summer, early autumn,
Oh, please
um,
tell us,
on
tell
Earth
us.
Island Books. There's UK subs, Charlie Harper's
Yep.
biography. I mean, that guy is like the grandfather of punk rock, and
Yes.
that's going to be a hefty book. There's going to be some stories in that. So that's coming out around that time on Earth Island Books, the UK subs biography. There's another one about Propagandy, the band Propagandy, coming out. Great band. And there's another classical punk band, Discharge. Everyone knows
Yep.
Discharge, another great band. There's a book on that, and they're all coming out on Earth Island Books. So it's going to be a busy autumn for Earth Island.
And that's what we're
Um,
expecting end of summer release for these.
yeah, end of summer releases for all of those. And on the record front, most of what's going on in Engineer is actually happening kind of through the spring and now. So by the summer, I'm not sure. Records tend to come out a bit quicker than books, so we'll see what's happening. We'll see who's on tour in
No,
the
please
autumn.
give us some names while we got you here. Who do people have to check out?
Well, so in America, in the New York area, there's a band called Neck Scars.
Mhm.
And Neck Scars are they're friends of Jukebox Romantics, and they're kind of that similar kind of slightly gruff, maybe hot water music sound. Absolutely brilliant band. Their second album's coming out on Engineer. Um, there's a Boston band called Oh the Humanity, who are really great, kind of almost metal cross with hardcore, because they're so fast and powerful. Their new album's out. And then in Europe, we've got two Italian bands. One are called Weekend Inferno, Weekend Cigarettes, and one are called Verse Chorus Inferno. And they've got a split album coming out called Weekend Inferno. Um, and that's kind of a pop punk thing, but they're kind of like Bad Religion, early Bad Religion, but
Yes, yes.
really good, really powerful, catchy. Um, there's
That
a
sounds like my kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's really my kind of stuff. I mean, there's a range of releases on Engineer. They're not all heavy or all, because some of them are a bit more even acoustic, but they're all good. The theme is they're all good guys and they all play good music. We wouldn't put out if we weren't into it. So pretty much whatever goes out on Engineer is going to be a pretty decent record.
Well,
I
that's what
can't have
I've
better than
always
that.
said, not only about what we put out personally on Altercation Records, but about music in general. There's only two kinds.
Yeah.
good and not good,
And not
you
good.
know? And
Yeah.
I
And
don't care what the
we ain't got
genre
time.
is. If
We
it's
ain't got
not
time
good,
for
it's
not
not
good.
good, and if it's good, I wanna listen to it.
Yeah. Exactly that. Well said.
So, all right, my
Excellent.
friend,
Well,
it's been great visiting with you. I really enjoyed our conversation, David, and I hope we do it again someday. All
yep,
right?
for sure. It's been fun chatting. Thank you, Travis. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All the best. Take care, my friend.
Take it easy. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay.
All right, there you go. David Gamage, everybody. I really enjoyed talking to this guy, and I hope to talk to him again in the future. If you get a chance, please pick it up. The Fire Still Burns. Lots of cool stories from lots of cool punk rock characters. Until next time, my friends, please do the right thing. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you all next week. Hey there, true crime fans. Let me introduce you today to the Cold Case Initiative. The Cold Case Initiative is a foundation that donates money to smaller police agencies all over the country. It does this in order to offset the costs of scientific, forensic, and DNA testing with the hope of solving cold case homicides and other horrific violent crimes that otherwise would remain unsolved. Please, if you have it in your heart and a little money to spare, go to www.coldcaseinitiative.org. Again, that's www.coldcaseinitiative.org and lend a hand where it truly is needed. Be a part of solving a cold case. Every little bit helps. Know that 100% of the donations that go to the Cold Case Initiative go to agencies that are desperately in need of the help. So please, if you can, do the right thing and make a donation. Thanks, and all the best, my friends. Hey, how you doing? Another nobody here, Travis Myers. This one's going out in particular to all my drinking friends out there, because I got a new favorite thing, and it's called Shanky's Whip, and it is magical. It's Irish whiskey mixed with a little caramel, a little cream, a little vanilla, and it's heavenly. What more can I say? I suggest you pick up a bottle. You can have it as a shot with a cold beer, like I like. On the rocks, it's great. Mix it with a little cola. I promise you, you're going to love this stuff. Next time you raise a glass, think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey, do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my nonsense. All the best, my friends.